Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dane's Desk, where each week I ask a guest about a different advising topic. Today, I'd love to welcome Tom Hindman. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm good, Dane. How are you?
Doing great. So, Tom, can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Tom Hindman. I am a new academic advisor for the College of Engineering at Drexel University, which is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. More specifically, I advise first and second year students who are majoring in electrical and computer engineering. And I was hired as a new academic advisor. This is my first advising role. I was hired smack dab in the middle of the pandemic last June. Prior to that, I was working for Drexel in a purely administrative capacity. So this is my first student-facing role. And due to my newness as an advisor, kind of learning the ropes and the circumstances, obviously, of the past year, I haven't been able to engage in the kata as much as I want, but
Hmm,
I'm looking to change that significantly in the coming years.
awesome. All right, yeah, and Tom, that's a great segue into a very important topic that we have today for Dane's Desk. Um, the whole topic around being a new advisor hired during this pandemic. So what's your feedback? What's your advice? What's your perspective on this topic here?
Yeah, definitely. So it's been interesting. I think that may go without saying, but it's definitely been a unique and challenging experience. So, obviously, with the pandemic, advising within Drexel was upended a little bit. It looks different during the past year. But significantly for me as a new hire, the process for onboarding also changed. And this is sort of unprecedented. So, there really wasn't anything in place to onboard somebody completely virtually. We really weren't able to have any of the in person training components, which are critical to a student facing job. So, feedback from my supervisor is typically given through Zoom or, quick emails, which makes it hard for me personally to pick up on nonverbal cues. That's a huge part of learning. And then all of my colleagues are also remote. So, unless I intentionally reach out to them, I don't really have that soft influence that your peers can usually give you, with they have more experience, they can just kind of lead by example. It's I don't really have my finger on the pulse there. So, that's the bad part, but it does lead to a good part. So, this presented a huge hurdle early on. So, for the first several months, I was really wrestling with the question of how do I develop professionally? How do I become good at this job when I'm behind a laptop in my house all by myself? So, to be very candid, I was very anxious, I was very stressed, but I eventually rewired my thinking and came to it as sort of an aha moment. So my aha moment, it seems obvious now, but in the moment it really changed everything. I realized I'm in a student facing job and what I'm going through is exactly what the students are going through. There's an entire half of my job where I can learn from another population who's experiencing something very, very similar to me. So if I'm looking for empathy, why not commiserate with an incoming first year student who's also experiencing college remotely? They're having hard times interpreting emails from their professors. As a parallel, I'm having a hard time interpreting emails from my supervisor. Are they feeling disconnected from their classmates? I am feeling disconnected from my colleagues. There were so many parallels that I kept finding. I'm around my spouse all day working from home. They're around their parents all day, going to class from home. So I realized maybe this is an opportunity to be a little candid with the students and share my status as a new hire, share my status as somebody who's learning the ropes just along the same lines as them in a remote environment. And what I found is by being very candid, by being very open with my advisees, I gained a lot of credibility as an advisor. It became very clear we're literally experiencing this together. A lot of the stressors that I'm feeling, they're feeling them as well. And when we come to that agreement that we're going through this together, they feel very validated and hopeful. It kind of helps them feel a little more optimistic. And in addition to teaching them, certain strategies that I've learned to get used to remote work, they're able to also teach me strategies, things I might not have thought of. So what I realized is this is a really big emotional development for myself, which especially during the pandemic, I'm looking at emotional development as a huge part of professional development. So really this unique rapport with my students has provided me with professional perspective that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. And even though the onboarding experience, I think parts of it are going to have to be, delayed until we're 100% in person. But for the time being, it's still a difficult experience, but this has presented a very unique opportunity for me to learn. So I'm very grateful that I was brought in when I was.
That's awesome. And I thank you for sharing your honest feedback here. And I love how one, you quickly realized to be truthful and real with your students, right? I think that only helps in gaining their respect and their trust and showing who you really are. That's important for any advisor, but I think especially in your situation, like you were talking about, hey, I'm new to this. Let's go through this together, right? Um, yeah, I agree too. The emotional development piece. I love how you also mentioned that not only were your students learning from you, but you learn from your students, right?
Mhm.
It's a two way learning opportunity there. That's great. That's awesome. So I thank you for sharing your perspective, and I encourage our viewers here, if you are a new advisor who was hired during the pandemic, reach out to us. Let us know what your experience was like. Feel free to share that in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out the latest episode of the Adventures in Advising podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. And again, leave us some feedback about these videos if you like this topic or want to see different topics. Tom, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Dane. Thank you so much for having me.